I'm Ashley Urisman. I am AFC's Director of State Government Affairs. Hopefully, if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet or collaborate with you yet, I will do so soon. We have had a very exciting year in all 50 states and the District of Columbia this year with AFC, and we are so proud and excited to welcome 4 legislators with whom we have been working on various issues across the country. So this panel, Statehouses to Startups, Legislating the Future of Finance, One State at a Time, is filled out by the estimable Delegate Marlon Amprey from Maryland, Assemblymember Brian Cunningham from New York, Senator Tim Grayson from California, and Senator Spiros Mantzavinos, and it will be moderated by Robert Savoie, who is the chair of the Fintech practice group at McGlinchey. We are so excited to welcome our panel, so thank you all.
All right, well, thanks so much, everybody. I think what we'll start off with to kind of kick off the panel is, you know, you're all legislators, you all deal with a number of different topics, and what I'd love to hear going down the line is, how do you think about financial services, right? Financial services is my life. That's what I deal with all day long, every day, but that's not your life. You deal with a lot of different things, and financial services is just one element of that. So I'd love for you to talk, each of you in turn, about, you know, how much you deal with financial services, if you've been really focused on a bill or a topic of interest. I know we've talked about EWA, and in one of your cases, there was a big home improvement bill that touches on a number of fintech companies. Let's go down the line and talk about that. How do you deal with financial services? What are the common issues that's come up, and what's your experience have been as a state legislator sort of grappling with financial services and innovation?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Delegate Marlon Amprey, proud to represent Baltimore, Maryland. So I serve on the Economic Matters Committee, and I'm actually on the subcommittee for banking, finance, and consumer protection. And one of the things that we did this just past year in Maryland was we expanded EWA regulation. So we were really excited to get that bill across the finish line. It was a difficult bill, I'll be honest, to get all the way done. It came down to the final, literally the final day, final debate on the floor on the Senate side, but we were able to get it done. And I would say one of the things that was really interesting about financial services and that bill and that space in particular was just trying to educate my colleagues on what it is and how it works, right? I think a lot of what the financial services space, especially fintech, a lot of the hurdles that we currently face in my body is just trying to get my colleagues up to speed on what it is, how it works. You know, you say fintech, like, what's that, right? So it's even that, you know, so I have to like really do a lot of educating and then explaining what the actual bill does, and then persuading them to come on the side of how this bill is beneficial to the communities that we serve. So I would say the EWA space has been a really big part of what we've been working on in Maryland, and I would just say just in general, the important part of what we're always trying to do a better job of, at least my office, is trying to educate my colleagues on how everything works.
And how hard was that with EWA, if I can, because EWA just, you know, classically I was a credit lawyer and so dealt with traditional consumer loans, and EWA is a really fascinating, different product. And how difficult was that? Because it's different in many ways from many of the products that people are used to.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is just at the ground level, right? Instead of trying to explain the nuances of how the actual systems work or how the employer works or how the technology works, just explaining like your constituent uses this, right? Like your constituent needs an extra $300 because a car broke down and they got to decide between groceries and a car getting fixed to get to work. This is the gap. This is what fills the gap. And I was able to point to literally in the state of Maryland, one of our largest users was actually the Prince George's County school system, right? So in letting people know Prince George's County was a big part of my committee, people in your district use this product. This is how they use it. This is what it looks like. So that's kind of like the best way to describe it and how it works, and ensuring that they understand the importance of the product itself.
Do you mind if we keep rolling?
Sure. Okay, I'm State Senator Spiros Mantzavinos from Delaware, and I chair the Senate Banking, Business, Insurance, and Technology Committee. So certainly these sort of things are often on top of my mind. But I think in Delaware and my colleagues, this isn't new. I mean, Delaware has had a long, rich history when it comes to financial services and financial innovation. So when you have 10% of the workforce in Delaware that's involved in financial services, my colleagues know what this is about. They know what this is, you know, what we can do. We know what we have done and how we are ready to be moving into the future when it comes to, you know, again, we do have an EWA bill pending in the General Assembly, but because we're small, because can be nimble, because we have that history, we're able to get everybody in the room, whether it be their Bankers Association, our economic development arm, through the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, whether it be our universities, our business communities, our regulators. We can get everybody in the room, have that conversation, because we know each other, we know the business leaders, and we get together and talk about these things. So it's not, being small allows us to be nimble, as we've been historically. And again, especially in this space, it's not anything new. And I think, again, it gives us a great position as we are looking ahead, talking with folks here today about what we can be doing in Delaware to help advance the fintech industry.
Mind if we keep going down the line? You want to talk about New York?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this conversation, AFC, to my colleagues here on the panel as well. My name is Brian Cunningham from Brooklyn, New York. I represent parts of central Brooklyn. And I think one of the biggest challenges we face is that in New York State, our financial services are kind of bifurcated among many different committees. So we have the Banks Committee, we have Consumer Affairs, and we have the Insurance Committee. So that's one of the biggest problems. I think when people get elected to the state legislature, one of the first challenges they have is that people generally arrive with a general perceived notion of what they want to do. And then you arrive to your LOB office and you realize that you're faced with a slew of issues that you've never interacted with. Some folks in the banking committee have never done banking. Some folks in the insurance company have never done insurance stuff. So I think one of the biggest hurdles is really the information gap, and then also getting our constituents on board with some of this stuff. A lot of times we get a bunch of emails about people trying to kill bills that they don't have the context on. One of the part of Central Brooklyn I represent is also an underbanked community where folks don't even have bank accounts. So talking about fintech and other things is a huge learning curve. So I think the big thing is really just getting folks to get one subcommittee that kind of holds the information for a lot of our financial services. Second thing is getting colleagues on committees that actually care about the issue and care enough to talk to industry and to colleagues who know more about the issue. And then obviously getting the message out to our constituents, which is always the hard part, is getting the message out. A lot of great things happen in state capitals, but if the information never hits main streets, then we have a big problem.
And I know you mentioned a little bit when we were prepping this that earned wage access is something that's being explored in New York. I mean, is that bills are being passed? Is that in an exploratory stage or being introduced, not passed? But is that an exploratory stage? And how do you think about that? The same question, right, that we talked about a minute ago was, it's a new product, right? It's really interesting and different. And how do you handle relating that to your constituents or to others in the legislature?
Yeah, we have quite a few bills. So the challenge is when folks come into the office, sometimes everyone introduces a bill. So sometimes it's really trying to find the best bill and the best model to modify, make amendments to, and push. For the last 2 sessions I've been in Albany, it's been a big part of the conversation. I think it's actually closer to the finish line than it is to the midway point at this point. I think we're just hashing out some details and trying to combine some of the best ideas on both sides of the aisle, but certainly trying to find the through line between most of the earned access wage bills.
Got it. That's great. Well, Senator Grayson, you want to talk us through California? And I know you had mentioned a bill that you were glad to talk about. So maybe you can talk about your perspective from a totally different state.
Absolutely. Speaking of perspective, here we are. You just finished a really good lunch, it looked like, and smelled really good. It's dim in the room, a little warm, and we're talking finance. Please, no napping. But anyway, it's good to be here. What an honor. Thank you so much for putting this together. And financial services and what it means to me, well, let me explain it like this. My wife came out with me, and she's enjoying shopping in Georgetown right now. My son and his wife just moved out of my house and bought their first home, and my daughter is just recently married. Finance means a whole lot to me right now, and here I am. Speaking of that bill that you had referred to, in California, we've had a rush of home improvement lending activity. And what's interesting is here's this contractor, and I'm still an active general contractor, but here's this contractor going out, having partnered with a lender and soliciting home improvement projects. And then once they get the consumer on the line for home improvement projects, then the contractor then turns to be the financier and provides the financial service or the product to be able to afford and finance that project. And so there are great innovation, great idea, turning into a one-stop shop kind of deal on the front porch or in the living room as they begin to review what the project's going to be and then how they're going to be able to finance it, except for the fact that the primary contact is that contractor who specializes in building and not in finance. So not sure quite how that product comes across to the consumer, and it has created some challenges. And by the way, just my take on finance in general is it's a false choice to say you either get innovation or you get consumer protection. I believe you can actually achieve both simultaneously at the same time. You can have great creative and innovative ideas that come to fruition, and at the same time be able to provide the guardrails and the consumer protections needed to create or to keep a healthy economic environment. So with that, we are working with that challenge in California, trying to figure it out, because at first, the first approach last year, or the year before actually, was to put all the liability on the financial institution, as though you should know whether that contractor is going to do the right job, you should know all the building codes. And then the other approach was, well, we'll just make it to where the two have to be bifurcated and separated. Well, you just destroyed the whole innovative idea. And so right now we're trying to make it to where the contractor state license board's involved, finance is at the table and not on the menu, and we're working it out.
So I think that's a great transition to something I think people would be curious to hear. I mean, with financial services, what are your biggest challenges? I mean, you know, when you're trying to have legislation come, you know, some of the folks here in the audience are deeply involved. They might be government affairs, they might be lobbyists, but some of us are not. You know, I don't do lobbying myself, and a number of the friends that I have in the audience, you know, we're removed from that, and we only sort of hear that secondhand. So, you know, as a legislator, I'd be curious to hear, when financial services bills or financial services issues come up, what are your biggest challenges?
If I may start.
Oh, please.
My colleague next to me already hit the nail on the head, and that is few people come into the legislature with any type of financial expertise, shall we say. So really the biggest challenge is educating colleagues on the banking committee and making sure, oh, by the way, I didn't even say my name, Tim Grayson, and I represent East Bay and San Francisco out in California. But the biggest challenge really is making sure that my colleagues on the banking committee that I chair are educated. And this is where you all play a huge role in making sure that my colleagues come to that dais with the information that they need.
I would definitely echo something you said as well, Tim, when you mentioned this idea that there's a tension when you talk about financial services between both consumer protections and innovation. And I think to your point, that is a false dichotomy, that we can't have two things happen at the same time. And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges I've seen. The other piece is really, I think, the tension between getting good ideas across the finish line. I think sometimes what we don't realize is that the business world is moving way faster than government, right? They're moving at the speed of light, while the government is still in these 6-month or 90-day sessions where you're trying to get a lot of things done, including the state budget, which takes 4 months, at least 4 months in Albany. And then you get to the last 2 months of really focusing on policy ideas. And sometimes you just don't have enough time through that process to actually hit the hammer on the head, the nail on the head.
I'm just going to echo what my colleagues on the panel said. I think a lot of it now is becoming generational too. I mean, you look at some of my colleagues, I grew up writing checks. My daughters and some of my colleagues in the General Assembly, I'll speak for my daughters, I don't want to disparage my colleagues, but they've never written a check. So understanding, you know, and bridging that between generations in the legislature, because some folks don't need educating. They're like, oh yeah, I'll just whip out my phone and do this, this and that, whereas others need some more, like I said, education and understanding of what it's about, or being able to do things more online. And I think this disruption that's happening in this field, in this space, it really does need you know, a way to talk about so that you can establish trust in the system and, you know, answer when sometimes things don't go well in another state, because when that issue comes up, or they're going to say, well, look what happened over here. But again, in making sure that we understand what it's trying to do, how it's trying to help people, how it's trying to promote economic development, if that's the case, and then just trying to bridge that through education and some trust building.
We're going to go 4 for 4 here. I'm going to echo what my colleagues have said. I think the biggest struggle definitely is innovation and consumer protection. And I would say under that umbrella, the component of it that makes it difficult at times is that we know that in every industry, no matter what you do, there's going to be a bad actor or something bad happens. That for some reason like takes over in the State House as like, watch out, we can't let this happen. Like there's like almost an we overdo it there, right? Something brilliant happens, there's not that same energy of like, look at this great innovation, let's take that and run with it in our state. That doesn't happen at the same rate as when a bad actor messes up and we have to then try and make sure it doesn't happen here. So I say that's a big battle that we have. I said the other thing, and I think everyone on the stage, I think we all share that we have, our bodies are all together in the same party. Just not only in the partisanship, but the other part is like working with the governor's office or working with agencies, and there's a lot of times our bodies are trying to put together regulatory things. It's not just my members that I have to work with, but also challenging and working with agencies. That can be another issue that I have as far as working with financial services, trying to get the Department of Labor to see the things that the way that our body sees it, and that can be sometimes can get a little dicey at times, more than just our colleagues. So that's the other part I would say can be difficult at times when we're talking about financial regulation.
But it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I guess my question to y'all would be, turning to what industry can do to help would be my question. I mean, what do y'all find helpful? I mean, are there things? There's certainly plenty of lobbying going on and different things that people try to do. But are there things that you find particularly helpful? And what are those things? And is it different by state? Or is it different by issue? Is it data? Is it human stories? Is it going through products in detail to sort of assist you with what you've talked about, where y'all are sophisticated and you understand financial services products, but maybe you have colleagues that don't, or they're colleagues that are new and their expertise or their background is in some other area. I mean, what are the things that industry can do that would make your jobs easier when you're grappling with financial services bills? And I recognize that, if you're chair of Financial Services Committee, it may be a different view, than if you're popping in on a particular bill. But that question, I think, would translate to the broader legislature in each of your states. So what could industry do? What are the things that are most helpful for you?
Who wants to start? Someone else want to start this one?
Oh, all right, I'll start.
Let the chair start.
Oh, thank you. Chair's privilege, thank you. Look, be honest. I think, for me, and I think a lot of my colleagues, making sure that whomever's talking to me, whether about an issue or from an association or from an individual company, is being honest. What is the good, the bad, the ugly? What are we trying to do? What's this? How can this help? That would be the first thing for me. The second thing is it's helpful to know people before they need you. So again, events like this, NCSL, Council of State Governments, ALEC, depending on your organizations, those sort of things help, where you can start to get educated and your colleagues can get educated. And it's not something that when a bill comes up or an issue comes up, it's suddenly out of the blue and I have no idea who this guy or this person is that's talking to me right now. What are they saying? I may have met them before and at least started the conversation. So I think honesty, being able to tell the good, bad, the ugly, and then knowing somebody before you're ready to jump into an issue or a piece of legislation is really the key. Final thing too, I would just say, being honest about what the opposition is saying. You're going to have there's every issue has at least three perspectives, if not more. I'm being kind with three, but there's different stakeholders that will get engaged. If you are dismissive, that's not helpful. If you don't acknowledge a concern that somebody else is raising, that makes some things difficult. So that's how I see it.
I would definitely say that being in rooms like this with folks who are practitioners is really important for me as a legislator. I think I sit on 6 committees in New York State, and banking is one of them. Finding opportunities as a legislator to learn is really important, but also using those opportunities in the off session to engage with legislators. I think sometimes, again, people don't realize that during the session, the focus is really getting the state budget passed and making micro cuts to pieces of legislation. You may get a few big bills, but the reality is every bill won't come to the floor. I think last year alone, there were 16,000 bills introduced in both houses of the legislature. The idea that you think that a legislator has the time in between meetings and everything else to read all 16,000 bills, I'm just letting you know right now the answer is no. So the reality is you really have to use that off-session time. I personally put my Calendly website on my Instagram, so if people are following me, you can definitely just click, get a 15-minute meeting block. If I can't make the meeting, my legislative director will make the meeting, but we definitely try to get a lot of information in off session so we can make better informed decisions, both in hearings and during session when things come before us.
I am so glad California put a limit on the number of bills we can introduce.
What is that limit?
You guys should.
Is it lower than 16,000?
It's way lower than 16,000. And you're right, we should put a limit on it. In California, we're fortunate, at least I consider it fortunate, that we're full-time. We meet January through September, August, September, and every year. And so there is a quite extensive process where it's very transparent, a lot of engagement, and that's the word I want to focus on, the word engagement. To be able to engage not just with the member. I can't tell you the number of times as chair of banking where I've had opposition come into my office and I ask the question, have you met with the author of the bill? And the answer is no. And I'm like, well, if you're not going to go talk to them, then how are we supposed to get to a resolve? How are we supposed to find a landing spot? So engaging not just with the member, but engaging with the actual author of the bill, but then also engaging whether it's with consumer groups or whether it's with small business or whatever group is being impacted along with you, engaging with them and trying to find, and this is what I remember the most that was pleasant in this whole process, was where the author of the bill and the sponsor met with opposition, and the two of them came to an agreement. If there were opposing ideas, came to a better resolve. And the bill was amended and was sent to the governor's desk and received a signature. So it's engaging, and it's engaging on all fronts. And when you do that, you hold people accountable, everybody's at the table, and then you get the good results that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I'll follow on that. I think engagement is important, making sure that that education piece is flowing down to us as legislators, but also would say like a bottom-up approach also. I think it's important that also engaging, like the good man from California said, is engaging the community groups, engaging businesses, right? Making sure that there's that bottom-up. So I'm not only hearing the information from those who want this bill to pass, I'm hearing it from those who would benefit from the bill. But I think back to what I said earlier, the human stories are really important too, right? I think it's important that there's a component of where we know that whatever we are doing, I think this works for any type of legislation, whether it's fintech or something else, we want to know that what we've done is actually working on the ground. We want to hear from constituents that, hey, this bill passed and now I have access to capital, and I'm so thankful for that, right? So as we just passed our EWA bill in Maryland, I'm looking forward to hearing stories, as we walk into the next session or even next summer, about why the importance of that bill and why it works. So I think it's important that there's engagement outside of just when you need that bill passed or you don't want that thing added to a bill, you want to get that killed. We need to hear from people all the time around all things. And I think, again, that human story is really important, knowing that how it's impacting the people that we serve.
Now, don't take up the entire rest of the panel with this question, but I'm going to ask you the contrasting example to that. What are things industry does that are counterproductive? I mean, what are the things that they do that really shoot themselves in the foot? Because, you got a lot of honest, sincere people that believe strongly in what they're doing and their business is. But you've talked about what industry should do. What are things that they need to stay away from? And what are things that you've seen that you would say, don't do this? And Senator Grayson, you talked about ignoring the sponsor of the bill, right? Not even engaging. Are there other examples about that where sort of you've seen things that you would say that industry should stay away from?
Absolutely. I've heard it said through the halls many a time in the legislature, oh, we hate that bill, we'll kill it in the other house. and I'm like, wait a minute. You better be working on it now, because if it gets through this house, flies through the committees, gets off the floor with a huge number of votes, and lands over in the other house, it's already got momentum going. And so we need to know what those flaws are. We need to know what the problems are. So I think one of the frustrating things is lack of engagement until late in the game for us. And it's already gone through the House, it's already gone through committee on the other side, and it's about to hit the floor, and then there's this rush floor alert, and we're gonna go kill the bill. Or we wait till it gets to the governor's desk, and because of relationship, we're gonna kill it there. And that frustrates everybody, and people have memories. And so with that, I would just simply say, don't delay. But if it's bad, it's bad, and call it out for what it is. If it's flawed, call out the flaw and actually give it a chance. But the other one is don't negotiate a flaw and then turn around after the flaw gets fixed and kill it. You were going to kill it anyway, so why did we go through all the exercise? So those are some of the things that I see as poison, toxic, and doesn't build good relationships.
Yeah. I definitely would say that the idea of making assumptions about looking at a member's past voting record and assuming that they're with you on a particular issue or not with you on a particular issue, I think it's really important for industry to meet with members of committees. I know that in my own binder every year, like this time of the year, I'm looking at who's going to be chairing a committee, who the minority party is. Sometimes people go straight to the majority party thinking that's going to be your pathway, but sometimes one of the best tools to kill a bill is actually raising debate on the floor. So I would say whether you're in a blue state or a red state, to talk to both the committee members on both sides of the aisle and not make that assumption that a bill's going to fly through. The last word of caution, if we talk about finance, is I've seen industry sometimes take out ads and send mailers in attack with never stepping foot in room 555, which is my office in LOB. So if you want to have a conversation, a comprehensive one, if you want to discuss an issue and figure out how do we get to the yes, I think everyone wants to get to negotiation, and I think using social media or using mail as a tool or a weapon to scare electeds doesn't work with some. Some folks have a good life after they leave office, but I think you'd be better suited to work with folks and try to figure out how do you find a compromise, because that's not a dirty word.
Yeah, I'm just going to agree with what my colleague said. I'll just again add, being either dismissive or not acknowledging what other stakeholders who may oppose you or oppose to your bill are saying and why they're saying it, because at that point it becomes a little bit of an arrogance, but it makes it harder to, if there needs to be a compromise or something, it gets it harder to, it makes the path harder. So as much as you may not like what the opposition is saying, if you don't acknowledge it, if you're dismissive or you diminish it, it changes the tone of the debate and around the bill.
Yeah, I'll agree with everyone said. I think it's important that you make sure you talk to everyone. I think a big mistake is that people assume that if I just talk to the chair of the subcommittee, if I talk to the chairman, if I talk to the speaker's office and I talk, will this bill will move? Make sure you talk to everyone on the committee. It's important. And I would also say the other thing is, how you treat everybody in the actual office building is important. I've seen bills not make it through because they found a chairperson or another legislator, myself, found out the person came, it was sweet to me, it was nice, and as soon as they hit the corner, they were rude to my chief of staff, rude to individuals who, interns, et cetera. So I think it's important that you treat everyone with kindness when you walk through the room. You never know how much that person holds weight on how a bill might move. So I think that's another slept on piece is like, man, treat everyone like they're important because they are. So that's the thing I would add.
That's good advice generally.
Yeah, generally. I agree.
Certainly in this case. Well, let me ask you then just a little bit different question. You've talked about the importance and value of this, and so one of the things I'll hear from clients is they're small companies, right? They don't have a ton of staff, and they're going to all the different states with all the volume of bills. It's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of time, and some companies are small and they don't have that, and that's why you have groups like the American Fintech Council to be able to sort of pool those resources, combine people together, and go talk to you. I mean, are there avenues of outreach to you, in context of small companies, that you would sort of suggest, or is that pooling of resources the primary way to go? And Assemblymember Cunningham, you talked about you have your Calendly app, right? Which I remember a few years back when clients started saying, well, you can just click this button and schedule it. I was like, this is amazing. I don't even have to email you to ask. I just click a button on your calendar, and then I can just pick whatever time works. But if you're trying to sort of scale effort or think about all the different members of the legislature, that is a high effort ground game, I guess, in to go talk to people. Are there other ways you would recommend doing that? I mean, obviously putting out a full page ad or social media, I now know that's on the bad list, but are there sort of things on the other side that sort of can help companies reach you when they just may not have the time? They may have one person and there may be bills, and 15 states that they're grappling with that impact their business in a real way. And how do they do that on a small company basis?
Yeah. It's a great question. I wrestle with this a little bit because we also, generally speaking, have smaller staffs.
Yeah.
People oftentimes look at members of Congress who usually have at least 18 staff members, where members of the state assembly can range between 3 to 5 staff members. And again, we're talking about 16,000 bills, 150 colleagues in the assembly, 63 colleagues in the Senate, and all the lobbyists and interests that come before your office. I would say there are ways to shortcut it. Technology certainly is a thing that we have become accustomed to, particularly post-pandemic. I don't need you to fly across state lines to come have the meeting in the office. You can set up a Zoom call. You can send a letter. We do read letters. We do read the emails. In fact, we bulk together a lot of emails at the end of the week on a Friday. I kind of go through and make that my admin time for follow-up, because if you have a meeting and no follow-up, it was a waste of your time advocating, a waste of my time sitting in a meeting. So I do think there are ways that you could shortcut it by just kind of creating systems of spreadsheets that can automate some of the stuff. AI is a real thing now that is helping, I think, a lot of people, both in the legislature and outside the legislature, expedite their work and augment work, not reduce workforce, but certainly help speed things up and help make things a little simpler and faster. But I would definitely say that there is a way that technology is beginning to close the gap between the legislative bodies and the people. Years ago when I was a staffer in the legislature, we didn't even have access to Twitter, so you literally would not find out what happened in Albany until the end of the week or until something was done. Now you are kind of getting real-time reports. Sometimes we're in private conferences sometimes, and this isn't good, but things are getting out there while we're meeting. But there's certainly a lot more information. We should certainly use that technology to close the gap in terms of reaching people that are decision makers. And also pick your issue. Everything can't be your issue, right? If you have a small staff, you got to pick your capacity level and what's going to be the most pressing and important thing to your business for that quarter or that session. And there's software tools, again, that sometimes help track the movement of legislation both in the state and outside the state lines.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think technology has been a massive tool, especially post-pandemic. And when I first joined the legislature, it was literally in the middle of the pandemic. So that was my first form of interaction with people with Zoom, and I'm using technology to create meetings. But I think the other way that if you're a small company and you want to get the most bang for your buck, coming to conferences, right? Go to NCSL, go to NBCSL, go to the other conferences where you know there's going to be a group of people from across different states in one room, and that way you can have the opportunity to have that face-to-face time with the individuals and their staff. I think that's a great way that you can not have to travel across 6 or 7 states. You can do it on one trip, and a lot of times these places are in nice, warm places, so you can get a little, bring the wife and kids, get a little vacation out of it too. So I think that's a great way that you can make sure you have some more interface with people such as ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what they said, but I also, want to emphasize that if this is an issue that's important to your business, you got to be involved. You have to find that way. And again, I agree. Groups like AFC, very important. But if this is going to add to your bottom line, I need to understand, or I want to hear from somebody that's directly affected by it, because otherwise it gets lost with lobbyists, contract lobbyists or association reps, and you don't really see that full impact. And I can have a better conversation with, let's say, the owner of a business to understand the full impact of a piece of legislation, rather, not, again, association, government relations types or contract lobbyists may not have all that information. So for me, it demonstrates that this matters a little more to somebody when I have them in person or on a Zoom call, or that there's a genuine, authentic engagement around a piece of legislation.
Technology is great, fabulous. This is where I'm going to give a little shout out to Cynthia Guerrero. I think you're sitting back there. Having folks like Cynthia, or can I just sell it, AFC,
Yeah.
And your membership to AFC is so vitally important, or other trade organizations. It's so vitally important to be a part of something that can be a voice for you, along with, they shouldn't be a substitute, a complete substitute for your presence, but they should be that strong voice. They're the ones that's going to bring and collaborate and bring together this huge group of people to create this very strong voice. But to reiterate what the senator said as well, is to be able to also, if this is so important to you, you have to spend time with the trade organization or with AFC. You might as well go ahead and also spend a little extra time to do that email or to reach out with a phone call or schedule the Zoom. And if you can possibly do so, actually show up and do an in-person meeting. Those are so incredibly impactful. But to be able to have someone that you know has access to that member's office on a regular basis, who has built a relationship already with that membership, as was said at the very beginning, don't wait till you need me to talk to me, let's have a relationship prior. That relationship may not be between you as an individual business and that member, but it sure can be between the trade association, or in this case, AFC, and that member prior. And having those kind of voices, being a part of the membership of a group like this is huge and plays a large role in how legislation unfolds and becomes law.
Thank you so much. I mean, so as we kind of get towards the back nine of the presentation, let me ask you all a question. You know, like we said earlier, there's a lot of people in here that are very familiar with government relations and legislation and all of that stuff, but there's a lot of people that aren't. What are some things about the legislative process that we wouldn't be aware of? I mean, maybe it is an unexpected thing that you deal with. You know, you mentioned joining the legislature during COVID, right, in 2022. You know, were there unexpected things where somebody's sitting back that says, why would this bill get passed? Or, you know, why would this happen in the legislature? Or what do I do to get involved in different things? But what's something unexpected that y'all deal with that there's, before you were a legislator, you would never have expected about the process?
I mean, I guess I kind of knew, but I didn't know the extent of it, is that, people say this, but it's just it's so true in politics. Relationships matter so much, right? Like, a good idea will get a bill through, but a good relationship will get a bill through faster, right? So like I've had situations where I was trying to get a bill through, and I thought it was a great idea. I thought I crafted an awesome bill. I had, you know, advocates who sent emails and did everything right, and I sat down, I had a great presentation, but the bill just wasn't moving, and I, you know, had to figure out who's the person that makes a decision on this bill in this committee, and I was trying to schedule a meeting with them. Come to find out, we stayed at the same hotel, we hang out at the bar, we're having a great conversation, we talk about the bill, we talk about our families, and that relationship led towards the end of session, like, oh, that's right, oh, yeah, let's make sure we get that, I did like that bill, let's make sure we get that. Like, relationships really, really matter. So I think part of the conversation we just had before about like making sure that you have those contacts, people, I would just say like, the relationships that you build are so important, and it's not a matter of like about having a favor. It's just a matter, like you said, 16,000 bills get introduced. It's hard to remember. It's hard to go through. So that relationship, that face, that conversation, those things stick and they matter. So I would just say the one thing that has, you know, I won't say I was surprised, but I just didn't know how true it really was, is how much relationships matter when you're trying to get a significant amount of bills passed through in a short amount of time.
I would just say how important timing is. And when I talk about timing, you know, whether an issue is ready or ripe to move forward, number one, but also timing in terms of you could be moving along in a session and then, I'll give an example, in Delaware, electricity prices spiked. Well, guess what? We're focusing on that. And the timing right now is not that I'm going to work on this other issue. This issue is now occupying, you know, taking up all the oxygen in the legislature and my time. So understanding how timing and how it can just get sidetracked really easy if something external comes will have an impact on your agenda and others' agendas. So timing.
I think one thing I was very surprised at when I got to the state legislature was how cold Albany was. I'm from Brooklyn. It's about 10 degrees colder any given day. So I got to warm a jacket. But on a serious note, I think what people don't realize, that everyone's kind of talked about it, is the relationship nature of the work. And that's not just relationships just in terms of people from the same party. But I think what people don't realize, because we watch the federal government so many times play out in what I call the real housewives of the Capitol. In the state level, folks get along a lot more on both sides of the aisle than you would think. Oftentimes we stay at the same hotels, to your point. We sit at the same bars. We're mostly in closer community. Sometimes going to the other side will get your bill moved a lot faster because you'll know exactly what the debate's going to be, as well as going to the other side helps you understand the issue, sometimes in a way that you haven't thought it through. And I think that's sometimes lost in the political discourse of today, is that people still talk, relationships still matter. And I think you said earlier, Senator, how important it is to treat the staff with respect. From the scheduler who actually gets your meeting on the calendar, to the legislative director who actually gives you the briefing on all the things they want you to see in the bill. I think those things really matter. And the last thing I'll say is folks also forget how bifurcated our jobs are. There's a portion of our jobs that is mostly focused on the policy piece of it and our capital work, but there's also that impact of going back home and that person who's going to lose their insurance coverage or can't get groceries. So sometimes you think we're just so focused in the clouds on your policy, but sometimes just really being a practical person that shows up for folks in your community. I think some folks miss that sometimes, and that we have families.
What a perfect segue into where I was going to head. And that was, yes, relationship. That's everything. But something that was a good lesson for me when I came into the legislature, came in under Governor Brown, I had some really good ideas. So being introduced to the legislature, I was sitting at a table with him having dinner. And as he started talking about his philosophy, I realized my good ideas were really bad, so I just kind of threw them away. But the point I'm trying to say is that good intentions are probably not the best launching pad to aspire for good legislation. We all know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I got one laugh out of that. Two, okay. And so, and I'll give you an example, but here's where I'm going. Unintended consequences was the biggest lesson I think I learned coming in that I wasn't expecting, and that was having this great idea, putting it into language, and then starting to hear the feedback of what, not just the policy, but the politics, or that is going back home. And how is that going to impact business? How's that going to impact innovation? How's that going to impact R&D, research and development? And the unintended consequences of even having one statement go out on Twitter, and it can affect the markets. And so with that, I give a little example.
Go ahead. We got about 30 seconds. You'll wrap us up.
Governor Brown woke up one morning and some motorcyclists on Harleys went by his house and disturbed his peace. So he went to the Capitol and in a trailer bill banned all modifications. And because he was mad because his peace was disturbed. It got through and it passed, but it began to impact the economy so bad because it was over $1 billion business in California on modifications for motorcycles. So I came back the next year and ran a bill to undo that trailer bill language for the banning of the modification, and he signed it. And the reason why was because of the unintended consequences. So with that, there's the 36.
That will round of applause for the panelists. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.